I skipped a law in the book on power, but law number 3 in that book just simply says this: conceal your intentions. And on the surface, that seems very deceitful, right? It seems that is saying something that would maybe go against the book, and probably in some ways when you're talking about politics and worldly power, it probably is. But what it's really trying to say and get across is, if you're trying to influence people, there are some times where the easiest way to influence them is to, in the beginning, conceal your intentions of what you're trying to do. Giving you an example would be, and we never think of it in these ways, but we put on a feed or a barbecue and had some food here for New Year's Eve. Pop firecrackers, invite the sheriff, invite our friends and our family. And on the surface, we invite them and say, come out, have some fun, pop some firecrackers, eat some food, blah, blah, blah. That's what it is on the surface. But our intentions are not to feed them and pop firecrackers. Our intentions are to gain their friendship and their trust so that they'll come to church and where God can touch their lives. So we don't go and invite them to the barbecue and say, we want you to come as barbecue because we're gonna have because you're gonna have to come to church next Sunday. If you come as barbecue, we're gonna look at me. We don't tell them that, because that just runs people off. But we do a lot of things. You talk about Sunday school kids. We conceal our intention with Sunday school kids a lot. Our intention is to teach them about the Bible, but we wrap that in a bunch of other stuff: games, prizes, the book, the God store. Isn't that what we call it? God store. And you say, well, that's really, on the we can rationalize it when we want to, but what that's doing is that's taking what we're trying to get done and wrapping it in something else. And as a leader, there's a lot of times you have to do that, because sometimes the task at hand, if dealt with directly, face on and head on, can hurt feelings. But if you can wrap that up in something that's a little less abrasive, then you're probably better off. Talking to our friends, talking to our family, especially family. There's nobody harder to deal with than family, because they already know kind of who we are, right? And so when it comes to family, a lot of times we have to be extremely careful that we don't offend them just because they're, cousin Bobby. We talk harshly to them because they're family, right? And we fight with family. Nobody fights better than family. However, to win family, sometimes you have to do that and wrap a lot of the stuff that we may think about one another up in something else. One of the things that they bring out in the book is that is the use of decoyed objects of desire. And you use those types of things to throw people off the scent of what you're trying to do. You think about, we're going to say we have a Mother's Day service, and we give a mother's, oldest mother, youngest mother, mother with the most children here. That seemed like a Pentecostal thing. I don't really get it. Just give some stuff away if you want to. But you do that, and that's something that they want. That's something that they would like to have. And so they're not really looking at coming to church. They're looking at coming to church to get something. Give bicycles away to kids. That's something a kid wants. Book backpacks and stuff like that for school. That's what, it's useful, and it's something you can give somebody they can get use out of. And really what it is, it's kind of softening just somebody just saying, well, I'm just going to go to church for the first time this morning. You gave them a reason to come. That's not necessarily the reason that we're trying to get them here for, but we're giving them something to come for that brings them in. Part of the way that these laws came about was from those old court days, those old king's courts and things of that nature, but yet some of them were based on something. And one of the statements that was made was everything in seduction depends on suggestion. Now, that's a thought that comes out of courting and relationships, and but what it does, it shows us that if you think about it, it's a whole lot more fun whenever you're dating to date with suggestion. You know, if I just walked up to my wife and said, "Look, I want to kiss you. I'm going to hold your hand." Well, I didn't do that. I knew she wanted me to hold her hand. I knew she wanted me to kiss her. It was weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks before I even would hold her hand. And you can ask her. I did that on purpose. It's all part of the game. It builds anticipation. It builds anticipation. And we think, well, you know, I just really, if you really think about it, especially when you start talking about things like Sunday school contests, things where there's a prize at the end that you can't get until you get all the way to the end. Perfect attendance awards. You see, that's the power of suggestion. There's something about winning something, but yet just to give somebody something as a gift, that's okay. But it's a whole lot different when you think you can win it. And there's a lot to be thought about and a lot to be understood whenever you're talking about if we really understood the power of suggestion, we would be a lot more powerful not only in our relationships but in how we affect other people. Because suggestion is something, I'm not telling you what to do, but I have a suggestion. Doesn't that seem like that's less abrasive up front?
Yes.
No, I mean, I could say, Brother Allen, mow the yard. And you know Brother Allen probably mowed the yard. But it's a whole lot sweeter and kinder, and it sounds less abrasive, and like I'm not telling someone to do it. I say, man, I tell you what, just in passing, just within his earshot, man, I tell you what, boy, the yard sure is getting a little long. I probably need to find somebody to mow it. And just leave it alone. Don't laugh at me, Brother David. You know how that works. And hey, probably the next couple of days I see Brother Allen out there mowing the yard. Why? He heard this suggestion, and it was his decision to mow the yard. I haven't told anybody to do it. You think about how much easier that is, and really we find, studies have found that people who do things on their own accord always do them better than people who are told to do them. And in that kind of in our workplaces and the people we work for, don't we much prefer them to ask us, how do you think we can get this done, and us come up with a way to do it and do it? It's always better than them just coming and saying, I want you to do this, and this. You know, we do that, and that. But yet at the end of the day, we are better at our job when we're allowed to do them in our manners and our ways, and it comes out better. So suggestion is a big thing. It talks about using smoke screens and hiding behind the familiar. Anybody who's ever played poker, having a poker face is a concealment technique. One of the things it brings out here that I thought was interesting is the paranoid and the wary are the easiest to deceive. The paranoid and the wary are the easiest people to deceive. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You take people who are paranoid about something, whether it be COVID-19, whether it be the government, whether it be Martians in space. I can tell anybody that are worried about those three things, I can tell them just about anything that I've heard or make something up, and they'll believe it. If you don't believe it, get on Facebook. There'll be every conspiracy theory in the world on Facebook, and people believe it. And people believe it because at their basic instinct, they're paranoid and overly cautious people. When you are always looking for the other shoe to drop, or you're looking for the negative in whatever it is that you're looking at, you have to be careful because you're very easy to deceive. People prey on your personality. And it's been that way for years. And if we think about it and we put it into practice and we understand that it's up to us to try to influence people, we have to be careful both directions. We have to be careful that we understand that those folks who are easily swayed because of that, they may be thinking a lot of stuff that's not right. I mean, they're thinking things that they've heard that they assume is correct. And then we also have to realize, we as people, we have to make sure that we're believing and seeing and understanding the right things, and we're not paranoid, and we're not the other direction where we're believing something that doesn't match the book, and we're trying to figure out, how to get somebody else to believe that. We got to make sure that what we know is correct. And and you say, well, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example right now. There's not a single tie being worn in this room right now by any of the men that are here. I can remember a time when preachers they would preach to you this morning, preach right directly at you because you did not have a tie on this morning. Because men come to church wearing a suit and a tie. I mean, that's what I've heard it preached more than once. It was preached to us in Starks. I know it's you Starks folks, but y'all get over it. The real truth of the matter is, can't take the book. Now, can you preach it from the standpoint of, you're supposed to come dressed in your best? Yeah, give God your best. Yeah, I get that. I understand that. But you can't tell me that a tie is going to get you to heaven. Nor is it going to keep you out of heaven. And so for me, rather than try to preach something like that that is stepping on and using a person's, well, I hate to say the word paranoia, but that personality type, and preaching that kind of stuff and getting people to believe that stuff that I can't take the book and prove, I'm wrong. Now, if we want to hold a conversation about, should you wear a tie to church, it's nothing wrong with it. I got a tie in there, I'll put it on for church this morning. But it's not the tie that's going to get me to heaven. It's just the fact that I like to wear a tie every once in a while. It's like I like to wear a suit every once in a while. But many times I'll be in the pulpit without a jacket on and without a tie. So we have to remember, when we're trying to win people and exert influence in people's lives, we have to understand there's some things that we have to throw up against the book and say, does this meet God's measuring stick? Is this the truth? Is this a thought? Is this a good thought or a bad thought? And as such, we have to promote those as those things. There's a lot in that book that talks about stuff that doesn't come right out and say, thou shalt not, or this is okay or this is not okay. But there's a lot of things that we understand. The Bible talks about, things that seemeth right to a man. Those things that seemeth right to us, we still need to promote those things, but we have to also understand, I'm not trying to hide behind a smokescreen of authority and theology to promote something. I'm not going to hide behind something. I'm not going to preach to you something that I can't prove, that I can't take the book and say this is what the book says about it. And anything else we're going to talk about is going to be just that. We're going to discuss the merits of whatever that is. Do I believe that to come to church in a halter top in Daisy Dukes is the right thing to do? No, I do not. I would think that most people would understand, with a slight discussion about just modesty, but then you're talking about, are you trying to win sinners or are you trying to win saints? Because if you're trying to win saints, that's already been tried and it doesn't work. And if you're trying to win sinners, then you might have them come in Daisy Dukes in a halter top.
That's true.
And if they do, that's fine. Because I'm not going to hold them same. If Brother Allen come in here, he got his little old short-legged, tight, cut off shorts and his flip-flops and his muscle shirt on and big old long straggly beard down to here. I'd probably say, Brother Reeves, what's going on, man? We got to fix what's happening here. That's a discussion to be had because Brother Reed's been in church a long time. Well, somebody just starts coming to church and they don't understand. They don't see. I'm not going to hide behind a smoke screen to deceive them and try to cover up what the Bible says. We're going to talk about what the Bible says, but I have to remember that a lot of times my intention is to get them to change their behavior. I may have to hide that behind a lot of different stuff. I might have to hide that behind a new converts class. And you say, how do you do that? Because I'm going to say, I need a new converts class. You need a new converts class. My intention is to get them to line up to what we believe the book teaches. But if I tell them, look, I want you to come to a lineup because the book says this teaching class, I'm not going to get them there. But a new converts class becomes a, let's talk about the stuff you don't know, and then let God work the rest of it out. So it's just the way that we're influencing people. One of the things that and this is something that I believe is very, very true. People can only focus on one thing at a time. You know the old shell game where you got the little pea under the three little cups? And you focusing on that one pea, and boy, they moving things around, boy, and then you can't ever find a cup with the little pea under it, right? That's because we have trouble focusing on a bunch of different stuff. We have trouble focusing on all those moving parts, and we have trouble focusing on one thing at a time. If you don't believe it, if people, well, I'm a multitasker. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, you're a multitasker, all right. And about half the stuff you multitasking falls through because you still can only focus on one thing at a time. Your brain is built that way. So if we are trying to influence people and we're trying to change people's life and better them in some way, pick something out and stick with it for a bit. It doesn't do me any good to give somebody a list of 20 items to do. I can just give them one, and when they get that done, we'll give them number 2. Why? Because if you give somebody 20 items, most people will sit there and look at that 20-item list and go, I don't know where to start. You know what I'm saying? It's just human nature. So we have to remember, if we're going to change people and we're going to influence people, the thing to remember is they need to be focused on something. That's the reason whenever it talks about how to conceal your intentions, it's easier to understand when I need you looking at this over here. I'm over here doing something else to help them out in some way, but here you go. And they're looking at them glasses, but I'm working behind the scenes over here, but they're looking at them glasses. They never see this work. They only see this. And so that's important to understand because sometimes people get caught up in you know, the whys and the hows and all that good stuff. The simplest form of concealing your intentions or to put up some kind of a smoke screen is this thing right here. I can tell from the pulpit when I step on somebody's toes. Because most people don't know how to conceal their face. They get tight, and the wrinkles around their eyes get weird, and their mouth goes. It's the way people are, right? I mean, we're all that same way. But you can't sit down at a poker table and win no money if you can't have a bland face. And the real truth of the matter is, in dealing with people, we should learn how to conceal our emotions, because if they disappoint you, if a child disappoints a Sunday school teacher, and that Sunday school teacher shows disappointment, you've lost that child for a while. Because they pick up on it. They read that as, oh, she's mad at me. They're mad at me. Oh, well, you know. And you say, well, I want them to know, do you? Or do you want to love on them to correct their behavior with something better than disappointment and meanness? Well, it's the same way. It's the same way in dealing with people. When people tell you something and you think, well, that's stupid, and that shows on your face, they picked up on that, and you just called them stupid. You say, I didn't call them stupid. Your face called them stupid. And you think about how many times you hold conversations with people who are unchurched, and they come up with some off-the-wall statement, you know, and you go, you've just lost your connection there. When your face should be telling them, well, I'm interested in what you had to say. Can we talk about that? because you want to hold a conversation about that to correct the error of whatever it is they're thinking. And you can't do that if they think that from the beginning you have done dismiss their thought. That's a problem. So you have to remember this thing right here that we're looking at people with, we have to make sure we understand how to use it. We have a tendency to mistake appearances for reality. If we're not careful, we'll mistake appearances for reality. We'll look at somebody and assume something. I'll give you a perfect example. I had Brother Sanchez preach for me when I first come here. He preached for us during Buying Strongman, right? I think, yeah, the first time he did Buying Strongman. And there was somebody in the church said, "Does he have a beard?" Made an assumption up front. He has a beard. Oh. Well, I challenge you to take the book and tell me where it's a sin to have a beard. You can't do it because it's not in there. A group of preachers got together and decided to preach against beard because in the 60s, beards was a sign of irreverence and rebellion. It's the reason we started prior to the 60s, nobody preached against beards. Every church in the world had them. So you tell me, is that beard a sign of rebellion or is that a sign of a man? And you take it all the way back, Jesus, they plucked his beard out. It's the reason why they use the word beard. So if you want to grow a beard, grow a beard. I don't care. Because that book doesn't tell me you can't grow a beard. Now, because he had a beard, you make automatic assumptions, and now you turn off a preacher's pretty good at what he does, and you just made a mistake. Does he have a beard today? In fact, he does have a beard this morning. It was on FaceTime this morning. Why has he got a beard today? Because he just had his karate cut out and he can't shave. He can't shave for probably another week. Now, I could assume he's wanting to grow a beard, but he don't want to grow a beard. He's itching. He wants to shave. He can't shave it. See, we make assumptions and we take appearance and we say there's a reality there. I'll give you another example. I have discovered these little things called grinds. You say, what? Well, they look like you dip in skull because they come in a can. Looks like a skull can. Now, I can't walk around town with this can in my hip pocket, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It's coffee grounds. No nicotine, no tobacco, coffee grounds. If you saw me in town going through Walmart and you happened to notice I had a round can that looked like a skull can in my hip pocket, what would you think? Appearance would be reality. You couldn't wait to get home and call one another and say, "Oh, he's dipping skull. He's dipping Copenhagen." And don't call me a skull dipper because I prefer Copenhagen when I dip. So he's dipping Copenhagen. I ain't dipping Copenhagen. I done found something that's got 4 times the caffeine that a cup of coffee does. I'm enjoying it. It comes with peppermint and spearmint and dark chocolate. Man, it is fantastic. I got some on my deck. I got some in the car. I got 8 cans sitting at the house. But I have to be careful because appearance can sometimes be reality. Don't let your good be evilly spoken of. There's a truth to that. And there's a reason that is important, because if somebody assumes something about us and we then try to influence them, we may have a tougher time if they have assumed the wrong thing. It's the reason we don't go to bars and sit in bars and drink water. Can you go to a bar and drink water or Coke? Yes. Is it smart? No. Why? Because what happens when the guy next to you is your next door neighbor, and then you go to him, and then he comes to church, and here's just, now you've got a conflicted message. So we have to be very, very careful. You have to understand those things we're trying to deal with. You simply blend into the world around you. See, Kierkegaard said it this way: the world wants to be deceived. People do want to be deceived. People want to believe what they want to believe. And if you give them a way to believe that, they will. And so the problem we have as a church is we have a world out there that wants to believe everything's okay and they're doing fine. How do you change that perception? You have to make for certain that you do that in a correct manner. A wolf in sheep's clothing goes both ways. As the church, we need to be walking around in the world, not blended in, being different, but understanding those people just like that wolf in sheep's clothing does. That wolf understands if I put a sheep suit on, I can get right in the middle of them. Here's the reason why I believe that it's so important to understand how to deal with people who are unchurched. I mean, if you are at your family reunion, and I'll close it with it. If you're at your family reunion, there's 25 of your family members there. You're the only person with the Holy Ghost. You're the only person that goes to church. And all of a sudden you're standing there, man, and somebody tells a dirty joke. What's your response? Oh, that's horrible. You should be ashamed of yourself. Why? I ask you, why should they be ashamed of themselves? They don't go to church. It's a dirty joke. They're everywhere. If you look at them like they're sick, and you look at them and, oh, that's horrible, I can't believe you told me. Don't you know I'm a Christian? How in the world are you going to win them people? Keep this bland and leave if it offends you that bad. But don't let them know you're leaving because of that dirty joke. Make a reason and go. Because if you let them know, there's going to be two responses. The guys like me are going to tell you another one just because it got under your skin. And the other ones are going to be thinking, the other group of people are going to think, well, what a hypocrite that is. You know, I just saw them the other day get mad and scream at a waiter at a restaurant. What's the difference? See, if we don't understand, they're looking at us just like we're looking at them. And we have to understand they're looking at us through different eyes than I'm looking at them. And I have to make sure that my interaction with them does not alienate me from ever being able to, I need them to come to me. I need my family to come to me when they're in trouble. And I need them to understand I'm the guy that's got good advice. But I'm not going to be that guy that looks down on them, that looks at them like they're crazy even when they are crazy. Because most of them are crazy. But yet I'm going to try to find a way to be in their presence, interact with them, but not offend them. And that's sometimes hard to do. And if you got somebody that tells a lot of dirty jokes, just make sure you go hang out with somebody else. I know it's just a dirty. Maybe it's somebody drinks too much. You're not drinking. But if they ever get the suspicion that you're looking down on them for something that they're doing, you'll never reach them. You'll never influence them, because they are automatically going to put you in that hypocritical Christian category. And nobody from that category ever wins people. In fact, those are the ones that typically backslide, because they can't live it both directions. They're straddling the fence. And when people straddle the fence, there's no way they can live very long doing that. And so when it comes to being able to lead people, we have to understand sometimes we have to lead them with the understanding from their side of the viewpoint. I need to understand they're looking at me in this way because they're not looking at me through a religious set of glasses. They're looking at me through a worldly set of glasses. And when they look at me through a worldly set of glasses, I need to realize what they're seeing. And I got to make sure that I do not destroy the common ground that we have. Because without common ground, we can't hold a conversation. And that's from children up to people on their deathbed. Any questions, comments? Man, we're actually going to get through. I ain't even drank my coffee. Seaport for you folks. All this stuff we'll put on, we'll have on our YouTube channel. It'll be under Ministry Leadership Tidbits. But there's nothing that I'm going to say in these things that I would not tell. A lot of these things are developed from a worldly set of guidelines, right? This book's not a religious book. Power is not a religious book. It's a sales or a world or a psychology, a philosophical look at power. So these are things that enlightens us and shows us there's ways that we as church people need to understand it, how people think in the world that we live in and how it views us. Anybody that thinks that we're the old joke of, they got a group that get to heaven, they being given a tour and they're going down through there, and all of a sudden Peter says, shh, 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 y'all be real quiet going past this street right here. Well, why is that? Well, this is the street the Pentecostals live on. They think they're the only ones here. I'm not going to tell you I disagree or agree with that 100%, because I don't disagree with that 100%. I think we have been taught and raised to believe. In fact, we just held a discussion of preachers who preach, if you don't go to my church, you can't go to heaven. Well, that's an idiot. There's a guy here pretty close to us that he don't want his people listening to any other preachers. That man's an idiot. I don't care if he does have a doctor in front of his name. He's an idiot. That might have worked back in the 20s. Might have worked in the 30s. Might have worked in the 40s. Might have worked even in the 50s. But by the time the 60s got here, people got smart and realized, there's other churches in the world. And there's other Pentecostal churches. There's churches you could drive to right now all around us that are probably, I'm not going to 100% guarantee it, but I feel like they're preaching the truth. They're preaching salvation according to Acts 2:38. They have some semblance of a standard of some kind, conservative or not, doesn't really matter. But they're preaching a salvation that goes along with what the book has to say. Why wouldn't, if they preach something, what's that going to hurt? If you go and you visit another church and you come back and tell me, well, so and so's preaching it this way, it's my responsibility to either collaborate with that and adhere and say, look, here's the reason he's saying that, and I believe that to be the case, or this is the reason he's saying it, but I don't believe that's the case, and here's the reason why, verse and number. But isn't that all our responsibilities when we hear something that that's different than what we think or know or believe at the moment? Anything I hear that challenges that is what I have to then study and delve into to discover, is it true or not, and do I believe it or not? If you come to me and said the moon is made of green or blue cheese, and I have no evidence either way, if I decide I want to believe that the moon's made of blue cheese, I have to go gather evidence. Well, if you come to me and you find something in that book and you say, man, it says right here, I wonder if it means this. It might. But you have to take that and study. The Bible says, study show yourself approved. You have to take that and study and find all the other scriptures that are linked to that. And you have to study, well, why was it written? Why was it said? Who said it? When was it said? What was the verses in front of it and behind it? And you have to then come up with a conclusion as to what you believe on that one scripture. You just can't take somebody's word for nothing. You shouldn't take my word for anything. You should always take what comes over a pulpit and make sure you believe it. And the only way you can make sure you believe it is to study. Now, if you don't study, take what I believe and believe it. I do my study. And if you want a chance you're going to heaven on my study habits, oh well, you probably got a pretty good shot at it. But I'm not going to trust. I never trusted that to Brother O'Brien's study habit. I loved him to death, but I studied for myself. I studied for me. When he preached something, I tried to go to the book and figure out, well, you got to remember, man, that's what we're trying to do to a world, and they're as smart as we are. And we have to make for certain that when we interact with them, that we don't run them off before we ever get them interested enough to go study. Because that's the only way they're going to really see it. The Bible says, I will draw a man to me. I'm going to draw them. In other words, I'm going to call them. I'm going to pull on them. I'm going to tug on their heart. What's he really trying to do? He's trying to get them interested in him. And when they get interested in him, they do one of two things. They start going to church and listening to a preacher, or they start opening the Word of God, and he starts to guide and direct them, and he will guide them to all truth, which is a plan of salvation that is biblical. And then they start looking for a church, and they go, well, who preaches this Acts 2:38 message? And when they find a church that preaches Acts 2:38, they go and sit and listen if they like the people. like the people, not the preacher. See, the church, the people who come and visit, they have to like you. I want to make sure they like me. But if I'm the only guy in there they like, they're not coming back.